Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Unravel Your Mind. We're here to transform relationships to love and life. And I'm excited to be here because I've been away for 10 days in Italy and had an amazing trip. So there's several questions lined up. But before we get into the questions, I wanted to just cover off on a few things that I thought were really interesting and things to share from my trip. I found that there was so many great reminders going to Italy. I've been there many, many times. Maybe 5 or 6, but I used to go there a lot. And then finally said, no, I need to go around the world. I don't want to keep going back to the same place. And going back there now, many years later, was just really spectacular in so many ways because it was a great reminder of a lot of things that I think the Italians do so well. And from a spiritual sense, they really are in this incredible place of loving life and enjoying life. And so I jotted down a few things that I wanted to just share as wonderful reminders for all of us when we're navigating through the thick, slower vibrational world of the third dimension, and how we can still live here, be here now, and show up in a different way. I think one of the first things that came to mind was just a great reminder of community. I was in Puglia, which is down close to like where the spur of the boot would, where the spur of Cowboy Boot would be. It's like that area. And it's still full of tourists, but not as much as some of the other places in Italy, like Rome and Florence. And so it was nice to be part of these communities. Like there was lots of little communities that were day trips, and we went around Astuni and Cisternino and Polignano. And there were so many fun places, and they all had a different feel to them. But what was beautiful is we were in the old town, and you could feel the community vibe. You could feel all the history. You could feel all the things that had happened, but also just how they really connect in community, the Italians, and they're just really there, like working their businesses, and yet they take a break from 2 to 5. We sat at one incredible restaurant, and lots of people were coming to the door. We got there just as they were, not closing, but before they were taking their last table seating around 2. And there was many people that came to the door that wanted to sit and eat. And, from more of an American mindset, one of my friends, was saying, isn't it just fascinating that they turn away this business knowing that they could be making a lot more money, especially now, we're coming down to the end of a lot of their tourist season. Why wouldn't you want to just maximize and just milk, the tourist season for all it's worth? And, as we sat there, we all kind of laughed about that, knowing that that's such an American industrialized nation concept, right? And so looking at them going, no, because they want to spend time with their family, they want to rest, they want to also it's part of their culture. They want to not be catering to tourists. They want to live their life as they know it. So it was a beautiful reminder how that siesta in the afternoon, and I'm sure that they're still working and doing things during that time, but just to be able to take the time, make the time, is just such a great reminder of something that we just don't even have culturally here. I mean, can you imagine taking from 2 to 5 off from whatever job it is that you do? So that was a great reminder. A couple of other things, I got to look at my notes here, that I thought was just really fun to see again is, oh, yes. Italians are great at expressing themselves. I just love how emotional they are. When you're like in it, it feels like, like what's happening. But you can see that they just say it like it is. They just express themselves, and then it's done. And then they move on. It's like, oh, okay. And why can't we just do that more? Maybe we don't need to do it in such a forceful or passionate way. Maybe there's an in-between way. But if we all just spoke our emotions and felt our feelings like they do, the world would be such a different place, wouldn't it? And yet we're sort of rewarded for being quiet or being in control of our emotions and our feelings, or not having any feelings, right? Just being emotionless. That is a way to get ahead, especially in the corporate world. So we remain quiet sometimes, in ways that I think if we just came out and said, "Hey, this is how I'm feeling," um, you could clear it. You could move through it. People would know exactly where you stood, and there wouldn't have to be all this water cooler discussion, about blah blah blah. He said this, she said that. That we could just say everything that we were thinking and feeling out loud to each other, so we could just work through it and move on, and not have that vibration of all the chatter that happens behind everyone's back. And so it's been a long time since I've been in that corporate environment, and I'm not suggesting that it's just in corporate. I'm just suggesting that it's such a wonderful feeling to just be able to feel your feelings and passionately express them, be heard, and move on. So I think that was a great lesson. The other thing that comes to mind is we stumbled upon a festival in one of the cities, and it was so nice. They were just singing and dancing, and we stumbled into this, not stumbled literally, but stumbled upon um, uh, an Italian restaurant that was vegetarian, not vegan. And so it was kind of cute. They had a sign, "Save the sheep." And so we sat there and had a wonderful time. And before we knew it, there was a little band that came. There was three guys, sitting on chairs and boxes, and one young kid, and an older gentleman, and not old but older, and then another guy showed up. They were all just playing instruments, and it was incredible. The music that they played, they didn't have any big soundboards. They just, like, the three of them just showed up with their instruments and just started harmonizing and playing. And everyone in the restaurant was just, dancing and moving with the music. And there was two kids sitting on the step, because it was like a little tiny outdoor patio. And then there was like these steps that led up to someone's home. And the kids were just, playing and laughing and jiving with the music, and nobody was on their phone. Nobody was, distant or disassociating themselves or not participating. Everybody was in on this. People would come walk by the little patio area, because it was kind of in this corner, and they would listen and they would cheer, and it was so much fun. And then we walked down the street after, having a few bites to eat, and bumped into a bunch of people dancing and playing more music and expressing themselves. We eventually got to a larger piazza where there was a whole group of people dancing in a big circle, and there was a point where the circle broke into pairs, and there was this young man, I don't know, maybe he was 16, and he was by himself, and he didn't have someone to pair in. And so, I don't know, spirit just inspired me. I jumped in and I was like, I'm just going to dance, with this partner, be his partner. And as I said, I think he was probably like 13, 14. And so maybe he was 16, but he wasn't that old. And he was terribly uncomfortable with me. I got bumped out of the whole group. An older gentleman said, like, "You can't be here." And then 2 moments later, after I'd gotten out of the circle, the gentleman just like pulled me back in, and brought me back in. And it was just an interesting experience to feel like I was sort of ousted there for a minute. I think because I wasn't Italian, and because I didn't understand the language. And then he realized what that meant by sort of bumping me out and not including me. And he brought me back in. And even though he spoke Italian, I could figure out what, he was calling out for the moves, and just followed everybody else. And it was just such an amazing experience. And I just really appreciated how we can just be in community together, and yeah, just as strangers come together and have fun. So I think there was a couple of other things. Yeah, I was kind of already saying this, people living in community. The small villages just create this incredible connection. And you may know, if you've read my book, Angels, Herpes, and Psychedelics, that I grew up in a town of like 2,500 people. So I'm from super small town, and I understand the value of that connection that you have, where people know you walking down the street, where virtually everyone, actually, and everyone knows you. They know your parents, they know everything about you, whether you want them to or not. But the upside of that is that you feel part of a community, and it's not a place where you really ever feel alone. You might have loneliness, but that was really palatable in these small little villages, and how much everyone cared for one another. So that was super fun to be part of. Um, I think some of the other things, let's see. Oh, and just, the idea of being on holiday, as Americans, we go sort of for those quick 1 weekers. And I was there for 10 days, so that was nice. It was a good time to just really step out of the US. And, after coming back from living in Asia for 7.5 years, I remember that feeling of always dipping back into the US, and feeling the vibration. And I'm not suggesting it's bad. I'm just saying that it's heavy and it's hard, and it's very separate, and people feel a sense of separation, I think, here more than a lot of places in the world. And having been back in the United States now for a few years and not traveling a lot, especially with COVID, not international, I haven't really stepped out of this energy. For me, it was amazing. I just love to step out of the US energy and to be in other cultures. And it just shifts you in a way to go to someone else's culture, to feel different feelings, and to watch people express themselves in different ways, and how much that helps us to just expand our consciousness and expand the tiny bubbles that sometimes we get ourselves into. I've lived abroad and around the world, and so I know what it's like to come from many different perspectives. But I also know what it's like when you're in one place for a really long time and you're not really exposing yourself to new ideas. So I really appreciated the trip. I feel so grateful that it all aligned. I was able to hang out with some amazing friends. It just there's coincidences that, of course, are not really coincidences, with friends, and that just felt super fun. A couple of friends came to Ostuni. Another friend I was able to meet in Rome. They were flying out the same day from Canada. So it was just fun, and with a great group of people, in an amazing villa. And so lots and lots and lots of stories and lots of connections were made. So I am so grateful for that. I would love to hear about your trip, though. So if you've taken any trips, whether it's far or near, anything that shifted you culturally, I would love to hear about it. So please put it in the comments below. All right, so let's jump into a couple of the questions that came in this week, that I would love to answer. And again, with the whole intention of transforming relationships to love and life. And so, first question is, what is the difference between goal setting and intention setting? I might have covered this on a previous, but this one, I think, is so pertinent for right now, because goal setting is not a bad thing, but goal setting comes from a different energy. It comes from here's my goals and I'm going to achieve this. Again, nothing wrong with it, but intention setting puts you into a space where you're really working with the universe and with spirit and with energies, saying, here's my desires. Here's my desired state, and help me to align this, so that you're not doing it all on your own, right? That's another illusion that we've created, that we're here to actually do something ourselves on our own. And when we really tap into spirit, we tap into the universal energies, whatever you want to call it, the law of attraction, all of these things play into it. When we believe that we are worthy of whatever it is that we're desiring, when we know that it is our birthright of abundance, that we can set an intention, and that then the universe can just align. And the hardest thing to do for most of us is just to get ourselves out of the way. So intention setting comes with a bit of a different energy of, as I said, really working with the universe. Whereas goal setting can be a little bit more in the masculine, like, I will do this, I will accomplish that. And I think we can still reach our goals. But I would encourage people to think more about your desires, because desire is also based on emotion, and it's based on, what are the core emotions that I want to feel? What do I want to experience? How do I want to feel about something, as opposed to, what do I want to get? How do I, what do I want to have from a material world? It's getting to the core of, how do I want to feel, whether it's in a relationship or in a purpose that we're playing out in a job or a career. Really getting into that desire and intention and letting the universe help us out. I know I've been guilty myself so many times of wanting to just do when spirit has asked me to sit back and be in that state and allow and attract the things that I desire, as opposed to work hard and be humble, which is my programming. And again, it doesn't mean that we don't have periods in our life where we're not working hard. Of course, we take inspired action and we actually, do step into our calling and our purpose and participate. So it's not about non-participation. It's just the energy and the nuances as to how we want to do this. If we want to do it with ease and grace, or we want to do it with, power and force. So that would be my offering on that question. I'm more than happy to hear anyone's thoughts. If there's something more you want to comment on, please put it in the notes below, even if you're watching this on replay. Okay, question number 2. Within the last few years, I've had 2 people I know well commit suicide. I still struggle with this and would like to know what you think about people committing suicide and how to deal with being the survivor. Yeah, it's a real serious topic, and it's a big one right now. I think there's a lot of situations happening where people are really not wanting to be on the planet. And I think it's can be easily summed up in one thing. And I'm not saying it's easy, but it's easily summed up to say that it's a mind virus. There's a virus in our mind that comes to us, an idea that we start to formulate more and more stories around, that then makes us really just step back away from the magic of living life, because we get so caught up in our web of this storyline and this virus of the mind, that it's really hard sometimes for people to be able to step out of that thought construct that just takes them down to a place where they just don't see a way out. And so suicide, as you may know from other videos that I've talked about this, is something where no matter what, you've come here in this lifetime to learn lessons. And if we exit early, which is always an option that we can choose to exercise, we will always come back in another life to learn those same lessons. So in a sense, suicide is very futile, because we still come back and start over in many respects, to learn those lessons as a human being here in this dimension. While I understand that doesn't make suicide any easier for anyone, it is a choice that people can exercise. They can choose with free will to take their life. Now, what I would hope is that we, as light workers, and anyone watching this channel certainly has some level of deep compassion and empathy for others, that we really help shine our light and show the way for others. It doesn't mean that we always have the answers, but it means that we can really show the purpose that we have, and the North Star that we have, and the knowingness that we have, that we're all connected and that we're all supported, that we're all in this together. So I think it's a time where we really want to sit with this and know that we're here to help each other, our brothers and sisters, as we navigate this journey. Now, I know for the people, because the second part of the question was, how to deal with being the survivor, right? So you're the one that's left here, and suicide brings shock and awe and trauma. And so I think it's so important that when something like this happens, no matter how close the person is to you or how distant the person may be, that you really feel into that trauma that it causes, and that you deal with the emotion of it, that you feel it, and that you find ways to release it. In some ways, it may be seeking professional help, people who have the skill sets to really help you get into that emotion and feel it. Because as we know, grieving in general, not just suicide, but grieving has, I think it's 5 or 7 main stages. And one of them is anger. And a lot of times we're really good at suppressing our anger. But if we do, and we don't actually express it instead of suppress it, it can cause a lot of issues within ourselves and create our own trauma and our own storyline. So I think my advice on that would be to really find a safe place to be able to talk it out and talk it through. so that you don't feel alone and that you don't get into your own mental thought loops and constructs that are rabbit holes, that are places that take you into lower vibrational thinking and just that lower vibrational feeling. We're here to enjoy life. We're here to have this experience as humans, and we will come back, chances are, over and over again throughout many lifetimes to have numerous experiences before we choose to actually go back to oneness and into a place where we don't show up in a human body in this lower vibrational field. So I hope that that's helpful. I'm happy to hear anyone else's thoughts and comments, or if you want a little bit more on that, please let me know. I'm happy to share. Okay, so let's go to the next question. Question number 3. What are a handful of red flags that can pop up in new relationships, 1 to 3 months in, depending on how much time you spend together? Well, this is a very interesting question. I love relationships as much as I love these. It's always so individual for people. One of the things that comes to mind to share is try not to look for the red flags. What I mean by that is sometimes we can get really focused on the things that we don't like or the things that aren't consistent, with our belief systems. And if you've come into a relationship, there's a chemistry between the two of you that has pulled you together and has caused you to want to be together for whatever reason, for whatever period of time. And so I would look for the opportunities for the life lessons that that person is bringing in for you before I would start looking for the red flags. Now, I'm not saying don't use your discernment. The red flag, I would say, is if you get a feeling, in your gut, or you get a feeling in your heart, or a heaviness in your chest, or, a weight on your shoulders, that those things shouldn't be ignored, right? So it's still using the discernment. And so if that creates a red flag, which just means that you're having a feeling about it, don't ignore it, right? Don't ignore it. But I'm just saying, don't really go into a relationship thinking, oh, I got to find all the red flags, because you will. You'll create the red flags if you want, because your mind is going to drive that energy in a way that is not necessarily going to be for your biggest lesson that that person might bring you. It might bring you into a more shallow lesson of judgment and not being grateful for all the things that they bring. So focus on the things that you're loving about them. Yes, the red flags may be there. Feel into your body, have the discernment. All those things are good. I think the other thing, though, that comes to mind about the first 3 months is, it's really the first year a lot of times, but the first 3 months especially, there's a lot of sexual chemistry, a lot of second chakra energy that comes into play. And, that whole phrase, love is blind, is certainly very true. So everything seems perfect in those first 3 months. In the first 6 months, even in the first year, the honeymoon period. And then after that, people's true colors really start to come out. But what's beautiful about the true colors is that those are the lessons that you signed yourself up for in the relationship. So look for the lessons, maybe not as much the red flags, but use your discernment and really be present in the relationship. Show up for yourself and who you really are. Don't hold back. Have the deep conversations. And if someone's not interested in having the conversations, the deeper conversations, and they're only interested in whatever, eating out and being social, or only interested in the sexual component of it, or only interested in, one aspect of the relationship, then that may be another thing that you want to just really, really allow yourself to feel into and say, does that resonate for me? Is this really how I want to spend my time? Is this deep enough for me? Is this going to help catapult me? I mean, I think I look at relationships as 3 main types. There's certainly more, but there's the relationships that are going to catapult you forward, right? So is this person helping you to just like, wow, I'm just expanding my thinking and the way that I view the world? And that's great if they are. Or is this person just helping me to marinate? Is this person helping me feel stable and grounded? And, that's in many cases, a great place to be too. But the other place could be that they're actually holding you back, that you're not speaking your truth, that you're feeling like, oh, I'm not sharing what it is that I want or need in this relationship. And that gets to a sticky spot. So really pay attention to those relationships that are holding you back or making you step back to fit their mold as opposed to further expression of who you are. So those are the relationships that are super healthy, super good for us, and they can rotate. I mean, they can rotate between catapulting us forward and maybe grounding and stabilizing us. But when we get to that place where they're pulling us back, if they're not willing to have the conversations, if they're not willing to do their own growth, your partner, then that's when you really want to say, maybe this isn't the relationship that I want to invest my time in. And identifying that up front is so much easier to then step out of than later on when you've developed a lot of routines and your life cords are certainly entangled and all of these things. So the earlier that you can really feel into your body, express yourself, and know yourself in this relationship, to what lessons you're bringing in and being willing to learn, the better off you're going to be in the long term, and the stronger the foundation you're going to build for a long-term relationship, if that's what you're looking for. So I'd love to hear your comments, and if there's anything more that you'd like to talk about on that topic, I'm happy to cover it again next week. Okay, so the next question, number 4, how important is it to have daily contact and connection with my spirit guides? And how do I do it? I love this question. I think, having that connection is always there. Our guides are always waiting for us to speak to them, to request things from them, to hear what they have to say. They're all aspects of our higher self. They're all aspects of ourself in another dimension. And so it's always available. Whether we actually take the time to do the connection is another thing. So that means quieting the mind. That means sitting and asking. I love to do connection through, I would say, journaling. I do a lot of remote writing. I do a lot of connection and listening through meditation. Other people do more rituals, and I've probably started to do more of these ritualistic things more recently. But actually, journaling is a ritual. Meditating is certainly a ritual. I do a lot of cards. I have a lot of angel cards and starseed cards and tarot cards and different cards that it's my way of really putting my energy into the question or the ask and shuffling the deck and seeing which card pops out, or putting my hand, spanning them out and putting my hand over and getting which card is calling out my name, and then getting the message from that. So there's lots of ways that I think we can connect into our spirit guides, but the most important is simply to have the intention to do so, is simply to request and say, hey guides, I'm here. I would like to get more information. I would like to feel more connected. I would like to feel less alone in the universe. And I guarantee that there will be ways that your guides will show you that they are there for you. Not necessarily in the ways that you're wanting or thinking always. And sometimes it is. Sometimes you can say, just show me a sign, or, help me with this, show me this, and that specific thing can happen. But I also don't want to set it up where you then become disappointed that that specific thing didn't happen. And so sometimes the more we can leave it open, say, show me you're here, show me a sign. Those are the coincidences and the things that happen in our life that are just really fun to experience. And so your guides are waiting. So absolutely, every day, connect with your guides in some way, shape, or form, whatever way works for you. But it always involves some element of quieting the mind, because when the mind is active, it's very challenging to be able to get those downloads and those hits, and to calm and to hear and to listen and to be part of source. So super important as we move into everything that's coming in the future, in the very near future. And it's already happening, but you guys know that. You're astute enough to know that we're moving into an incredible time. In some ways, it's going to feel very difficult. And the more we can transcend and unravel our minds, right, the more we're going to be able to sustain a peaceful state of heaven on earth, and not this chaos that is swirling and cantankerous, and the separation that is happening out there, especially as the political things ramp up. We really want to be sensitive to not stepping into these ideations around separation, and that we step into connection and community and support for one another. So we'll talk, I'm sure, a lot more about that as time goes on and as questions come in. So I greatly appreciate your time today. I greatly appreciate everyone who's submitted questions. I can't wait to hear more. So if you're watching this on replay, you can type them in the chat. You can private message me on Beth Bell Live on Facebook. You can message me on Queen Bliss B on Instagram. So lots of different ways we can communicate. I look forward to hearing anything that you have on your mind that we can help transform in relationship to love and life. So until next week, I'm wishing you much bliss and love and peace and happiness.